Hey everybody, welcome back. It's great to be here with you today. For anyone who's new to me, my name is Brentan, and today we're going to be working on a practice that's going to emphasize our internal hip rotation and our ability to do that movement. So when you're ready, let's go ahead and get started together in a seated position where we'll start with just an assessment. So we did this in our external rotation practice if you participated in that, but we'll start in Dandasana, which is just this seated 90-degree position. So we know that if our hips are not willing to flex this much, then what you get is something like this, where the hips resist that and instead the low back spine flexes. So what we're trying to avoid that. So we may need to bend our legs, we may need to separate them, just so we can get really sensitive as to how we're up like this. And then if we're still pulling back, my recommendation would be to take the hands back, feel that angle of where your back wants to go, and move towards that angle so you're more like this. And so you're basically just opening up that angle, making it a little bit easier for yourself to experience the same thing as this 90 degrees. So from here, I need my legs at least hip width distance apart. And I'll just say hip width distance, maybe outer hip to outer knee to outer pinky toe. I want to feel that the heel goes forward evenly, the ball of the foot from the big toe to the pinky evenly. And now I'm going to see, can I hold my shape really, really still and just isolate my right leg's ability to internally rotate at the hip socket. So maybe an inch, maybe 2 inches. I'm going to roll it back and I'm going to see again. Maybe an inch, maybe 2 inches. I'll roll it back. And I'm just going to go in and out of this a few times. I'm not looking to improve any depth. I'm really just looking to do this with precision and control. This is also giving me some information about what's my end range like here. So I know that if I set my toes in this alignment and rotate my leg, this is about as much as I have before I do any exercise. Maybe that'll change after this practice. Let's do our other leg. And if it feels quite effortful for you to hold your rest of the body still, that can be so. That can be so. But it's a worthwhile use of our efforts. So when you're ready from that, go ahead, slide your hands behind your knee and help them flex all the way in. So that gave us a little bit of a taste for what our rotational capacity is and kind of introduce the joint to that movement. So now what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to find a seated 90-90 pose. So you'll also remember this from our external hip rotation practice as well. So let's start with the right leg forward, the left leg back. The pose is called 90-90 because that's approximately the angle we're looking for in both legs. However, if there's some pinching or something going on here, we can certainly modify and take the feet closer into the pelvis. I think that's where it's going to feel a little bit better. So you just kind of have to feel for yourself, what is this? All we're really looking for, one leg's in external rotation, back leg is in internal rotation. So in the external rotation class, we focused more on this front leg. This week, we're going to focus more on our back leg. So in our back leg, from here, the first thing we can do is we decide if we want to lean back, we decide if we want to sit up, or if we want to move forward over that front leg. And that's why, because from here, we're going to start working with some more internal rotation capacity back here. So we're just going to see what happens when we ask of the back leg for the leg to rotate in the thigh bone and the foot to lift away from the floor just an inch, maybe not even, maybe none at all, and then lower it down. And so figure out how you need to be kind of lifted onto this front leg for support and go in and out. So lifting that back foot and lowering it, and lifting and lowering. And again, this may not be a visual thing, like you may not be able to see it, but the point is that we're going for the contraction that would make that movement possible. That's the contraction we're going for. That's going to help these tissues adapt. Next time you lift it, hold it. We're going to have this contraction and hold it here for 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, releasing. So if you feel it like deep in that left buttocks, perfect. That's exactly where we are targeting it. However, depending on our development, we may feel it in other areas of the leg as well. So from here, I'm just gonna turn towards the leg and apply some pressure on it so I can push the leg down and away from me. And at the same time, I'm gonna contract my leg into my arm. So you won't be able to see any difference, but I can feel the difference, and I can feel it precisely in that area again. Now to switch our sides, let's begin to lift this back leg now towards external rotation. And as we lift, let the pelvis follow, so you're in the center with the heels down, where we can just kind of go a little back and forth, left to right, to kind of floss out the hips a little bit. And then we can turn towards the back. We can set ourselves up in 90-90, so the legs should be just kind of naturally in the other position. Giving the legs some time to adjust here. And it may be that, every little different type of exercise we do with the legs in this position, it may be that you kind of reset the hips. Totally fine. And now I'm gonna see, where do I wanna be? Maybe I wanna be forward a little bit. I wanna be forward enough that I don't really have any weight in this back hip anymore. And I can just start to work on picking that back toe up by rotating the hip in the socket, and then taking the back foot down. So doing a few of these. Now the next time you lift the toe, or you're doing the action to lift your toe, hold that contraction. I know it's intense, but be here for 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Good job. Release that down. Come back on up. Rotate back to center there. And another, again, a little bit of hip flossing left and right. Okay, so here's where we can grab 2 yoga blocks or a step stool if you don't have 2 yoga blocks. We'll place them on the lowest height, and again, very similar to our external hip rotation class, we'll come to a modified supported squat. So the point being here that the legs they're not loaded as much as they could be if we were to take the support out from underneath us. Maybe we'll try that in a class in the future. So taking the legs, it's, the squat is traditionally like external rotation because that's where the pelvis has more mobility to come down like this, for example. So the legs are currently externally rotated. I'm gonna take them a little bit wider apart than I might normally so that I have a lot of space in between them, because the internal rotation component is going to go in towards the midline. And so I'm gonna start with my right leg, and I'm gonna start to get sensitive, trying not to move the pelvis on the blocks or really move any other part of the position. And just feel for that internal hip capacity. So this is called our active range of motion that we're developing here because we're controlling each component of it. So very different than something like a passive range of motion, which would be like putting ourselves in a stretch and just letting kind of gravity find space for the joints to be in position. So we're often able to do things passively, much more intensely, much deeper. You can have deeper joint positions in a passive position than you can actively. And so here we're trying to increase the range of motion that we have active control over. So when you're ready, go ahead and switch your sides. And so that's very, very important for the health of our tissues. That's what determines like how controlled we are, how stable we feel. In a lot of cases, that will also kind of redefine the strength in our tissues as well. Good. Okay, come back to center. Do your right side again, go in, and then just lay your hand on your leg and just give a little bit of pressure. Again, don't try to change anything in the hip. So this is what I mean by passive, right? Like you can get yourself into a deeper position if you push on something rather than if you're just like using your muscles to try and control the action completely. So working passively is not a bad thing. It's very good because it can help us generate new stretch tolerances over time, and that's where we get flexibility from. Come on up out of that, do your other side. But the point is, I think especially in yoga is that we do a lot of things passively that we don't balance with their active counterparts. So it's sort of like we want to learn how to do things, the things that we know how to do passively, ideally we would love how to know how to do actively to the same degree. Okay, coming back up here, I'm gonna come off these blocks and I'll just use one block now. These were my heavy cork blocks because I like to sit on those, but for this one I'll use a lighter block, a foam block, because we'll use it to squeeze. So something as lighter weight is more ideal for me here. So let's go ahead and come down into kind of like a supported side plank. So you come down onto, let's say, your left forearm. Your chest feels nice and open. Your pelvis is kind of set back from your shoulders. And as you look back, there's like lots of different ways that we could lay ourselves out here. So I want my pelvis to be pretty much stacked, right hip over left hip. And then my legs are stacked. And I'll take my block and I'll put it right in between the knees. So from here, I can work on that internal rotation as well by pressing the knee down into the block and lifting the heel. Trying not to take this rotation from the knee joint, which we know is possible and it's not a bad thing, but for the purposes of developing hip internal rotation, I want knee to ankle to be neutral and to rotate from the hip capsule. Thank you for holding this with me. I know it's hard. Come back and go in and out. The next time you come up and hold. Hold. Keep holding if you can. Time under tension, it makes our tissues adapt. And come on down. Go ahead, press yourself on up. Let's come to the other side. So setting ourselves up there. Taking some deliberate time to set up the pelvis well so it's stacked, so the legs feel like they're drawing evenly out, and so that you have some control to hold your pelvis nice and still, anchored still, as you place your block. And the first rotation, hold, and just kind of feel like, does everything feel about right? Are you compensating? Are you borrowing from any place? Fix your position and take the movement just from the hip itself. Then take it back and go in and out. Good job your last time. Hold it up. Good, and release. Go ahead, come on up out of this side. I'm gonna ask my body to repeat that one more time because I know that repetition is also key to how tissues adapt. So as I come down, place the block, place the pelvis, and let's go for 10 reps on this side. We can just kind of go in and out, really trying to focus on smooth, controlled movement. And it might feel funky if you're not used to moving like this. It's okay for things to feel funky, for them to feel even uncomfortable. The trick is it really in deciphering pain. And when I mean pain, I mean something that's telling us to do something different. A lot of our sensation is not necessarily trying to tell us to do something different. It's just saying, wow, this is new and interesting and I haven't been here before. So I stopped counting. I don't know where I'm at, but feels like we should be about 10. So the next time you lift and hold, hold, hold. Don't clench anything around it. So we're not looking to take unnecessary tension in any other part of the body. And then release and come to the other side. An internal rotation is one of those things in yoga where we just don't have a lot of poses that offer us this type of movement nutrient. So all the more important if you're someone who's like yoga is like your main thing. And I'm gonna go ahead and start. Okay, and so your next one, hold. Thanks for playing today, you guys. Release, shake it out. Go ahead, come on up to your feet. Maybe you would shake it out here. Okay. The last thing we'll play with will be some standing balance and hip work. So again, I invite you to move towards a countertop, a wall, the back of a chair, a couch. If balance is something that kind of is distracting or that's still developing to capacity for you. And then let's meet with the left leg lifted. So there's a couple of things I always do when I come into a standing balance. I always bounce. And I feel the outer line of the body be neutral and consistent through the entire chain of bounce, if that makes sense. And then I come up. So everything's neutral there. The pelvis is also neutral. So this leg right now fully flexed. And so what can I do to hold my whole body nice and stable and just rotate that left leg towards the right side of the body? And now it's not much, right? Because our internal rotation is really not that much. I'm gonna keep the rotation and I'm gonna take the knee down towards my other knee. And my hamstring is working back here. So if your hamstring cramps, take a break, shake it out, but it's probably a good thing. It means we need more. And so I'm gonna take the knee forward. I'm gonna keep it in internal rotation this whole time. And I'm gonna floss the hip in and out of flexion. After your last one, go ahead, release that leg down. Do whatever feels good and right. And then take your right leg up in front. Have a few moments there to kind of feel your body go into neutral alignment as best as you can. And then I'm going to see, can I just rotate my right hip in, but my standing leg's not rotating. My standing leg has to work now super duper hard against this action. And now I'm going to see, can I keep it in internal rotation, but can I start to bring the knee down towards my left knee? My heel is going to stay squeezed in towards the bottom, and that's my hammy working back there. And now I'm just going to go in and out. Good job. Take that leg down. Anything that feels good here. And then ready to move on to the rest of today. Thank you so much for joining. And I also want to mention, if you want to get your hands on my resources for everything I'm using to construct these classes, consider joining us on Patreon. It's $1 a month minimum. You get access to all of our resources and lots of other fun things that we do for our patrons. Plus, you get to support our ability to make this content. So thanks so much for joining again. I'll see you here next week.